From the moment Sandra stepped inside the luxury car showroom, something inside her felt strangely tight, almost like a soft pressure she could not name. The bright lights reflected on the polished floors, the glass walls shimmered with the afternoon sun, and every car stood like a quiet throne waiting for someone powerful to sit inside. She had been in public places many times. She had seen people whisper, stare, or freeze in surprise, but today was different. Today the whispering felt heavier, almost pointed, as if every small breath in the showroom was turning into a quiet judgment. And she did not know why. She walked in beside Keanu, trying her best to act normal, but her steps slowed when she noticed the man behind the main counter. His smile was too thin, too polite, too worried about who she was and what she looked like. She watched him greet another customer with warmth, but when he turned to her, his tone dropped into something cold, something stiff. She pushed a small smile anyway, pretending she did not notice. Keanu, who rarely missed anything, saw it at once. But Sandra tried to hide it. She always tried to hide it. She preferred to brush off disrespect rather than let it show. She took a breath, hoping to ease the tension inside her chest, but the room felt brighter and yet smaller than before. Still, she stood tall because that was who she had trained herself to be. Strong on the outside, even if she felt a little cracked inside. Yet the moment that truly shook her came only minutes later. The showroom was packed with people admiring cars that looked more like sculptures than vehicles. Sunlight slid over the deep metallic paint, creating smooth waves of color. Sandra moved closer to a dark silver car with soft curves and a warm shine. She reached out with the tip of her finger to feel the cool surface, not touching it fully, just close enough to sense it. She whispered to Keanu that she had never seen anything like it, and her words were soft but full of wonder. That was when the salesman walked toward her with a sharp tone in his voice, loud enough for everyone around to hear. "Ma'am, I'm not sure this is the right place for you," he said. For a second, she froze, unsure if she heard him correctly. She turned her head slightly, trying to understand what he meant. The room seemed to pause with her. Keanu stared at the man with calm eyes, but Sandra felt her face warming, her ears filling with a quiet ringing, as if all her confidence had slipped out through her fingers. "Excuse me," she asked softly, afraid her voice would tremble. The man cleared his throat and crossed his arms, eyes flicking deliberately toward her clothes. She was dressed simply today, jeans, a soft, worn sweater, comfortable shoes. She did not look like someone who came to buy the most expensive car in the building, and she certainly did not look like someone the salesman cared to impress. "These models are reserved for serious buyers," he said. "We have other options you may find more suitable." His words felt like a slap she did not expect. They forced her heart to knock hard against her ribs. She tried to swallow, but her throat tightened. The room spun a little, not from dizziness, but from embarrassment twisting itself deep inside her. She could hear a woman nearby gasp quietly, and another man glance at her quickly before pretending not to look. Every whisper suddenly felt sharper. She did not know where to place her hands, where to put her eyes, or how to breathe without feeling watched. Shame found a way into her stomach like a cold stone. It reminded her of moments she thought she had left behind long ago, moments when people judged her too quickly, moments she had worked hard to forget. Keanu stepped closer to her, his presence steady and grounding, but he did not speak yet. Sandra, embarrassed, kept her eyes low, wishing she could disappear into the floor. She felt like she had done something wrong, even though she knew she had not. She felt small in a room where she usually felt comfortable. She felt reduced, not by her own choices, but by someone else's assumptions. The salesman continued with a tone that grew more careless with each word. "If you would like something in the lower range, I can show you the section in the back. Those cars might be more realistic for someone like you." Someone like you. Those words echoed in her bones. She felt her cheeks burn. Her breath quickened, even as she tried to hold herself together. She did not want Keanu to see her break. She knew he cared, she knew he noticed everything, but she did not want to add weight to his shoulders with her own feelings. She wanted to stay composed, but inside, a small part of her cracked. Keanu finally spoke, his voice calm, steady, but carrying something quiet and powerful under the surface. "Someone like her," he repeated slowly. The room grew silent. The salesman shifted uncomfortably, but tried to stand his ground. "I only mean we have a certain level of customers here. It is best to guide people toward what fits their position." Keanu stepped forward with gentle precision, but there was a strength in his presence that made the air tighter. People around them watched closely, some pretending not to, others unable to look away. His voice remained even, but each word was clear, measured. "And what position do you think she holds?" he asked softly. The salesman hesitated, finally realizing he had miscalculated something. He glanced around nervously, but it was too late. The room was already too quiet, too focused on him. He looked at Sandra again, but this time she did not look down. She lifted her eyes with a steady sadness, a quiet strength rising from the hurt. She did not speak, but the weight of her silence made the man shift his feet. "Sir, I only meant—" "No," Keanu said quietly. "I'd like to hear your answer." The salesman opened his mouth, but no words came. His confidence had fallen apart. He looked trapped inside his own assumptions, exposed in front of everyone. Sandra continued to stare at him, her breathing still uneven, but she refused to step back. If she could not stop the shame she felt inside, she could at least stand with dignity. People around them whispered softly. Some recognized Sandra, others simply saw a woman being judged unfairly. Either way, the atmosphere had changed. The room no longer felt like a showroom. It felt like a place where truth had been put in the center for everyone to look at. Finally, the salesman mumbled, "I apologize if I offended you." But it was not sincere. It was rushed, embarrassed, meant only to save himself. Keanu noticed, Sandra noticed, everyone noticed. Keanu slowly turned to Sandra, his expression softening for her. "You okay?" he whispered, so gently that only she could hear. She nodded, though her eyes glistened slightly. She blinked the feeling away, but her heart still felt unsteady. She wanted to leave, but she did not want to run away, not again, not from something that had nothing to do with her worth. Keanu reached for her hand, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, supportive way that made her chest tighten with emotion. His touch grounded her, pulled her back into herself, reminded her of the truth she sometimes forgot. She was stronger than the moments that tried to break her. Then Keanu did something that made the entire room fall silent, in a way Sandra had never experienced before. He walked to the most expensive car in the showroom, the one placed at the center like the crown jewel, and placed his hand gently on the hood. The salesman's face drained of color. Other workers moved closer, unsure what was happening but sensing that something important was about to unfold. Keanu looked back at Sandra with a small, warm smile, the kind that made her heart feel seen again. "This one," he said softly. "She should test this one." The salesman stuttered. "Yes, sir, that model it requires pre-approval, and I mean." Keanu raised a calm hand. "I'm not asking if she can test it. I'm telling you she will." Everyone froze. People who had been browsing nearby slowly stepped closer, pretending to look at other cars but actually watching them with wide eyes. Sandra felt her breath catch, not from embarrassment this time, but from the overwhelming gentleness of Keanu's gesture. He was not defending her in a loud or aggressive way. He was defending her through quiet respect, through action, through a kindness that spoke louder than any confrontation could. But before she could say anything, something unexpected happened. A woman from across the showroom stepped forward, her voice shaky but clear. "Sir, I saw everything," she said. "And I just want to say she did nothing wrong. The way she was treated, it wasn't fair." Soon another voice followed, then another. People around the room nodded, spoke softly, said they noticed what happened. The salesman looked overwhelmed as the room's attention turned toward the truth he had tried to hide behind polite coldness. Sandra felt a mix of gratitude and disbelief. She had never expected strangers to stand up for her. She always felt she had to handle everything alone, but today was different. Today, kindness came from places she did not expect. She turned toward Keanu, her eyes softening with emotion she could not yet explain. And that was when Keanu stepped even closer to her, lowering his voice until only she could hear, his face serious but full of quiet meaning. "There's something else you should know," he whispered. Her heart stopped for a moment. "I didn't bring you here by accident," he said gently. Sandra stared at him, confused. "What do you mean?" Keanu took a slow breath, and for the first time that day, he looked like the one who was nervous. He looked like he was carrying something heavy inside him, something he had not planned to share yet. "I came here today because there is something I've been wanting to tell you," he said, "and I thought maybe this was the right day." Her breath caught again, but for a completely different reason this time. His eyes softened in a way that made her feel like the room, the people, the cars, the tension, everything had disappeared, leaving only the two of them standing in a quiet, fragile space. But before he could finish his sentence, before he could reveal what he carried inside his heart, before he could give meaning to the words he had been holding back for so long, someone suddenly rushed into the showroom, calling his name loudly. "Keanu, you need to come outside now. Something happened." Everyone turned. Sandra froze. Keanu's face changed. And the moment that was about to change everything between them was suddenly broken. Sandra felt her entire body tense as the man burst into the showroom with panic in his voice. The air shifted instantly, like the room itself had been holding its breath and suddenly exhaled in confusion. The workers stopped moving. The customers froze with half-raised hands. Even the salesman who had embarrassed her earlier stepped back, unsure of what was happening. But Sandra only looked at Keanu, searching his eyes for answers, for safety, for something that told her this was not as serious as it sounded. But Keanu's face had changed in a way she had rarely seen before. His quiet, steady calm remained, but there was a sharp alertness behind his eyes now, something protective, something urgent. He took a slow breath, then gently squeezed Sandra's hand before letting it go, and the warmth of his touch slipped away too quickly, leaving her with a sudden cold feeling she did not know how to explain. The man who had rushed in, a security staff member from outside, was breathing fast. "Keanu, you need to come immediately," he said again. "It's something happened outside, and they're asking for you." Sandra stepped closer. "What happened?" The man hesitated, unsure if he should speak in front of her. That hesitation alone made Sandra's stomach twist. Keanu's eyes softened as he glanced at her, almost as if he wanted to shield her from whatever truth waited outside the glass doors. "Is someone hurt?" she asked quietly. Keanu took another slow breath. "We should go see," he said. He did not answer her question. That silence was enough to make her heart beat faster. Together they moved toward the entrance. The once bright showroom felt strangely dim, as if the colors of the luxury cars had faded into the background. Sandra felt everyone watching them, but for the first time that day, she did not care. The embarrassment from earlier sat somewhere behind her now, replaced by something far heavier, a sense that something important was happening, something that would change the course of their day in a way neither of them had expected. As they stepped outside, the cold air hit her skin with a sharpness that made her shiver. The sun was still shining, but there was a strange heaviness in the atmosphere, a quiet hum of tension. People were gathered near the sidewalk, forming a small crowd. Some held their phones, others pointed, others whispered. Sandra's eyes searched the scene, trying to understand what had caused the commotion. Then she saw it. On the ground, near the edge of the curb, sat a young boy holding his leg in pain. Beside him was an older woman, perhaps his mother, her hands trembling as she tried to comfort him. A parked bicycle leaned awkwardly nearby, its front wheel bent inward. The boy's face was scrunched in pain, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. Sandra's heart tightened instantly. Keanu moved toward them with quick, steady steps, his sense of urgency clear. When the crowd saw him approaching, they parted slightly, creating a path for him. Sandra followed closely, her eyes filling with concern. "What happened?" Keanu asked gently as he knelt beside the boy. The woman looked up with surprise and relief. He fell off his bike," she said. "A car came too close. He tried to avoid it and lost control. I don't know if his leg is broken. He's scared. We didn't know what to do." The boy looked up at Keanu with wide, tear-filled eyes. "It hurts," he whispered. Keanu nodded softly. "I know, buddy. We're here now. You're gonna be okay." His voice was calm in a way that could steady even the most shaken heart. Sandra knelt on the other side of the boy, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder, trying to keep him calm. "You're very brave," she whispered. "I know it hurts, but we're not going anywhere." Keanu looked at the woman. "Did anyone call an ambulance?" She nodded. "Yes, but they said they're delayed, something about traffic blocks." Keanu took a slow breath, glanced toward the road, then back at the boy. Sandra watched him closely. Every movement, every glance, every word he spoke carried a softness she admired deeply. His patience, his kindness, his calm, it was all so genuine. It made her chest tighten with emotion she tried not to show. The boy winced again, gripping his mother's hand. Sandra leaned closer. "Can you tell me your name?" "Leo," he whispered. "Leo, I'm here," Sandra said gently. "We're going to help you breathe slowly so the pain doesn't take over, okay? Can you try that for me?" He nodded weakly. Keanu looked at the damaged bicycle. then at the road where a black car had stopped further away. The driver stood outside, pale, shaking, repeating over and over that he had not meant to cause the accident. It was clear he was terrified, not because of potential consequences, but because he genuinely cared that the boy was hurt. Keanu stood up and walked toward the driver slowly. Sandra watched him, curious and anxious. The man saw Keanu coming and immediately started apologizing, his hands trembling. "Sir, I swear I didn't see him," the man said. "He came out of nowhere. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean." Keanu raised his hand gently. "Take a breath," he said softly. "Are you hurt?" The man shook his head quickly. No, I'm fine, I feel terrible." Keanu nodded. "It was an accident, but right now the most important thing is the boy. Help is on the way. Panic won't make anything better." The man swallowed hard, nodding again. Sandra noticed something quietly powerful in Keanu's voice. He had this rare ability to speak with firmness and compassion at the same time, a way of grounding people without making them feel small. She felt something warm in her chest, a mix of admiration and something deeper she could not yet name. Keanu turned back toward Leo, kneeling beside him again. "Leo," he said softly, "can you tell me where it hurts the most?" Leo pointed to his shin. Keanu examined it carefully but gently, trying to avoid causing any additional pain. "Okay," he said softly. "We're going to keep you as still as possible until the ambulance arrives. You're doing really well." Sandra noticed the boy's breathing start to steady. She stroked his hair gently, trying to distract him from the pain by telling him a small, calming story about how she once fell off a bike too when she was young. It was not dramatic, not comedic, just warm enough to shift his focus a little. For a brief moment, the world around them slowed down. It felt like a small circle had formed in the middle of chaos. Keanu, Sandra, Leo, and his mother, all connected by a fragile need for comfort and courage. But that fragile peace did not last long. From the edge of the crowd came another voice. Softer, uncertain, but trembling with something that caught Sandra's attention instantly. "Miss Sandra." She turned and saw a teenage girl standing there, holding a notebook and a pen with shaking hands. The girl looked starstruck but also hesitant, unsure if this was the right moment. She bit her lip nervously, her eyes flicking from Sandra to the injured boy. "I'm sorry," the girl said softly. "I didn't want to interrupt. I've watched you my whole life, and I wanted to say thank you. You helped me through some really hard years." Her voice cracked. She seemed embarrassed for approaching during such a serious moment, but Sandra saw the sincerity in her eyes, the way the girl was fighting tears, the way she held that notebook as if it carried her courage. Sandra's heart melted. She gave the girl a gentle smile. "Thank you, that means a lot, but right now." "It's okay," the girl whispered quickly, stepping back. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." But Sandra shook her head. "No, I'm honored you came, and I'm not upset. Just give us a moment with him, okay?" The girl nodded, relieved. Keanu glanced at Sandra with a soft expression she almost missed. Something tender, something filled with quiet admiration. Maybe because he saw how she handled the girl with warmth instead of irritation. Maybe because he saw something in her that she herself often forgot, her ability to make others feel safe. The ambulance sirens finally approached, growing louder as they neared the showroom. The crowd parted again as the paramedics rushed over. They examined Leo quickly, speaking in calm voices as they lifted him onto a stretcher. His mother followed closely, holding his hand. Leo looked back at Sandra and Keanu. "Thank you," he whispered. Sandra smiled softly. "You're going to be all right." Keanu placed his hand gently on the boy's shoulder. "Stay strong, Leo." The ambulance doors closed, and the vehicle drove away with its lights flashing. The crowd slowly began to disperse, some returning to the showroom, some going back to their day, though many stayed just long enough to look at Keanu and Sandra with expressions that carried gratitude and respect. Sandra stood there quietly, the tension draining from her body in slow waves. The cold wind brushed against her cheek, lifting a few strands of her hair. She wrapped her arms around herself, not because she was cold, but because she felt emotionally full, overwhelmed by everything that had happened in such a short time. Keanu stepped closer, his voice soft. "You okay?" She nodded and looked down. "I just didn't expect any of this." Keanu looked at her carefully. "What part?" She hesitated. All of it, the showroom, the embarrassment, the accident, the girl, everything. Keanu's eyes softened. You handled everything with so much grace. She looked up slowly, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. I didn't feel graceful, she whispered. That's because you don't see what I see, Keanu replied gently. Her heart skipped a beat, not because of the words themselves, but because of the way he said them. Soft, honest, quiet enough to feel personal. Before she could reply, the teenage girl stepped forward again, notebook in hand, still nervous but gathering courage. Miss Sandra, she said, I'm sorry again, but could I please get an autograph? It would mean everything to me. Sandra smiled, of course. As she signed the notebook, the girl's hands trembled and tears gathered in her eyes. You don't know how much you helped me, the girl whispered. Through loneliness, through anxiety, through times I felt invisible. Sandra's heart twisted gently. She wanted to hug the girl, to tell her she mattered, to tell her that even the strongest people feel invisible sometimes. And then the girl said something that struck Sandra deeply. You made me believe that kind people still exist, she said. People who try, people who care, people who don't pretend. Sandra swallowed hard. Keanu heard it too. The girl pulled back, smiling through tears, and walked away, leaving Sandra standing there quietly, lost in a mix of gratitude and vulnerability she did not know how to put into words. Keanu took a step closer, lowering his voice. There's something I need to tell you, he said again. Her heart thumped. This was the second time today he said those words. She looked at him, trying to read the emotion behind his eyes. Earlier, he continued softly, in the showroom before everything happened, I was trying to tell you something important. Her breath hitched. I didn't bring you here by accident, he said. Her pulse quickened. I brought you here because today, I thought I could finally tell you the truth about something I've been carrying for a long time. Sandra felt her stomach tighten. Keanu, she whispered, what truth? Keanu inhaled slowly, as if preparing himself to open a part of his heart he had kept hidden for years. But at that exact moment, before he could speak, before the words could reach her, before she could step closer, someone behind them suddenly called out. Miss Sandra, you need to see this. It's about the boy, something strange happened. Sandra turned sharply. Keanu's expression froze. And just like that, the moment she had been waiting for slipped away again the moment Sandra heard someone call her name. Something inside her tightened again, not with fear but with a deep curiosity mixed with worry. The voice came from a man standing near the edge of the parking area, holding his phone in one hand and waving the other urgently. His expression was serious, almost troubled, and Sandra felt Keanu shift beside her as if bracing for something unexpected. The day had already become heavier than either of them planned, and now another twist was pulling them deeper into uncertainty. Sandra and Keanu walked toward the man, their steps slow and cautious. The wind had grown cooler, brushing against their skin with a strange insistence. The man's phone screen glowed in his hand, and as they approached, he held it out to Sandra carefully, almost respectfully. I don't know if this is something you want to see right now, he said in a soft voice, but the boy you helped, something happened when the paramedics were taking him in. Someone recorded it. Sandra hesitated. Her heart thudded softly but steadily. She wasn't seeking attention, she wasn't looking for validation, she just wanted to make sure the boy named Leo was safe. Still, there was an uneasy feeling growing inside her, a sense that the video the man held might reveal something she wasn't prepared for. Keanu stepped closer, his presence warm and steady beside her. What happened? He asked gently. The man swallowed. Just watch. Sandra took the phone carefully, her hands trembling slightly. The screen reflected in her eyes as she pressed play. The video began with shaky footage of the ambulance preparing to leave. Leo lay on the stretcher, looking small and scared. His mother stood beside him, brushing his hair gently, whispering something soft. Sandra felt a tug in her chest as she watched. But then the camera zoomed out slightly, capturing the moment when the paramedics checked Leo's leg again. And suddenly, the boy pointed toward Sandra, toward her with wide eyes. Mama, he said softly in the video, that lady, she helped me breathe. She made the pain feel smaller. His mother's eyes filled with tears. And then the boy added something else, something that made Sandra's heart twist so hard she felt her breath catch. She looked like an angel, Leo whispered. I didn't feel so afraid when she talked. The video ended with a soft gasp from the small crowd watching. Sandra's eyes burned. Her throat tightened. She exhaled slowly, blinking hard as emotion flooded her chest in deep, warm waves. She had not done anything extraordinary, at least she didn't think so. She had just knelt beside a child in pain, trying to steady his breathing, trying to comfort him with simple words. But the fact that he felt safe because of her, that touched something she didn't often let herself feel. Keanu watched her carefully, his gaze full of something soft and complicated. Respect, admiration, tenderness, maybe even all three. She avoided his eyes for a moment, too overwhelmed to hold the weight of what she felt inside. "Are you okay?" he asked gently. She nodded slowly. I didn't expect that," she whispered. "You never do," Keanu replied softly, "and that's why it means so much." The man who had shown them the video stepped back with a small, respectful nod, leaving them alone again. The wind carried the faint sounds of the city, cars passing, birds overhead, distant conversations. But around them, everything felt strangely quiet, as if the world had paused again just long enough for Sandra to breathe. But the peace didn't last. A voice she recognized all too well suddenly called from behind them, the teenage girl from earlier, the one whose hands had trembled as she asked for an autograph. "Miss Sandra," the girl said breathlessly, rushing forward. I'm sorry, but I need to tell you something, and it's important." Sandra turned toward her gently. "What is it, sweetheart?" The girl clutched her notebook tightly, her voice trembling. "It's about the boy and about something he said before the video. I heard it because I was standing close." Sandra's heart raced again, worry flickering through her ribs. "What did he say?" The girl took a shaking breath. "He said he wasn't scared until he heard you and the man, Keanu, speaking to him." Sandra rested a hand on the girl's arm to calm her. "That's okay," she whispered. "We were just trying to help." No, you don't understand," the girl insisted nervously. "He said something else too, something strange." Keanu stepped forward, his voice soft but steady. "What did he say?" The girl swallowed hard. He said he heard you both argue, but you weren't arguing at all." Sandra frowned. "Argue when?" "Right before you reached him," the girl whispered. "He said he heard your voices in his head, not outside, inside." A chill ran up Sandra's spine. Keanu's expression shifted slightly, but he didn't speak. "He said," the girl continued, "that he heard a woman's voice telling him to breathe slowly and a man's voice telling him to stay strong. But neither of you had spoken yet. And he knew those voices." Sandra's breath caught. "But that's not possible," she whispered. The girl nodded quickly. "I know, that's why I thought I should tell you, because he wasn't confused. He said it very clearly." Keanu and Sandra exchanged a look, long, quiet, wrapped in shock and confusion. Keanu finally looked back at the girl. "Thank you for telling us," he said gently. The girl nodded and stepped away, leaving them in a silence charged with something they could not yet understand. Sandra turned to Keanu. "What does that mean? How could he hear us before we even reached him?" Keanu took a slow, deep breath, his jaw tightening in quiet thought. "I don't know," he said softly, "but maybe it means he felt something from us. A connection, a sense of safety that his mind turned into familiar voices." That explanation sounded logical, almost comforting, but something inside Sandra didn't settle. She had felt something strange too when she knelt beside the boy. An emotional pull, deeper than usual, as if something in the moment had reached inside her chest and connected her to the boy's fear, and somehow eased it. But she didn't know how to explain that feeling, and she wasn't sure she wanted to try. Keanu looked at her again, his eyes searching hers gently. "There's something else I need to tell you," he said quietly, "something that might make more sense now." Her heart thudded again, harder this time. This was the third time today he mentioned needing to tell her something important, and twice already the world had interrupted before he could speak. "Keanu," she whispered, "what is it?" Before he could answer, the salesman from the showroom stepped outside, looking uncomfortable and apologetic. His presence pulled their attention reluctantly. "Mr. Reeves," the salesman said quietly, "I wanted to apologize again for earlier, and I wanted to let you both know that the test car is ready if you still wish to try it." Sandra tensed slightly. The embarrassment from earlier flickered back into her memory like a soft sting. She wasn't sure she wanted to go back into that showroom. She wasn't sure she wanted to stand in the same space where she had been judged so casually, so unfairly. But she also knew Keanu had brought her here for a reason he had still not shared with her. Keanu glanced at the salesman, then turned to Sandra. His voice was soft, almost gentle enough to erase the sting of the past hour. "You don't have to go back in," he said. "Not if you don't want to." She looked at him carefully, her heartbeat steady but loud inside her chest. "But you said you brought me here for a reason." Keanu nodded slowly. "I did." "And you said you needed to tell me something." "I do." Her breath trembled slightly. "So tell me." But once again, something unexpected shifted the moment. Near the showroom doors, a woman's voice suddenly rose, shaky and distressed. "Please, someone help me. I can't find my daughter. She was here a moment ago. Please, my daughter." The panic in her voice cut through the air like a sharp blade. People turned immediately. Sandra's body reacted before her mind could even process the situation. She moved toward the woman with quick, steady steps, Keanu right beside her. "What happened?" Sandra asked gently, placing a hand on the woman's arm. The woman's eyes were wide with frantic fear. "She's only 6, she was right behind me, and then she disappeared. I can't find her anywhere." Sandra felt her heart twist. She knew the terror in a mother's voice, even though she wasn't a mother herself. She recognized the raw fear of losing sight of someone precious. The crowd around them grew restless, scattered eyes searching for a small figure. Keanu scanned the area quickly, his posture tightening with alertness. "What's her name?" he asked. "Emma," the woman cried. "She's wearing a yellow coat. She's small, she wouldn't go far." Sandra stepped closer, her voice warm and steady. "We're going to find her, I promise." The woman clutched Sandra's hand desperately, her tears falling without control. "Please, please help me." Keanu looked at Sandra, a silent agreement passing between them. They would not let this child disappear without finding her. They split their focus, moving through the parking area, calling Emma's name softly but urgently. Sandra checked behind cars, near benches, down the small walkway that led toward the side of the building. Keanu scanned the opposite direction, his steps focused and fast. The tension in the air grew sharper with every passing second. And then, Sandra spotted something small behind a row of decorative plants, a tiny yellow sleeve moving slightly. Her heart jumped. She ran toward it, kneeling quickly, and there she found little Emma curled up behind the bushes, hugging her knees tightly, her eyes red from crying. "Emma," Sandra whispered softly, "sweetheart, are you okay?" The child looked up at her with trembling lips. "I got scared Mommy left. I thought she left forever." Sandra gathered the child gently into her arms, holding her close. "She didn't leave you," she whispered. "She's looking for you right now. She loves you so much." Emma clung to Sandra, burying her face in her shoulder. Sandra's heart melted as she stroked the child's hair in soothing circles. Keanu appeared a moment later, relief washing over his face when he saw the little girl safe. "Emma," he said gently, "your mom is waiting right over there. Let's take you to her." Together, they walked Emma back toward the crowd. The moment her mother saw her, she cried out and ran forward, pulling the child into her arms, holding her as if she would never let go again. "Thank you," the woman whispered through tears. "Thank you, thank you." Sandra felt warmth spread through her chest, the kind of warmth that stayed long after the moment passed. Keanu stood beside her, watching her with that same quiet admiration he had shown earlier. And finally, after the chaos settled, after the mother carried Emma inside, after the crowd drifted away, Keanu turned to Sandra again. This time there was nothing to interrupt them, nothing pulling their attention away. The wind slowed. The noise faded. The world softened. Keanu took a slow step closer. "Sandra," he said quietly, "I brought you here today because I need to tell you something that I've been afraid to say for a long time." Her heart pounded. Her breath caught. She waited. "The truth is," he began softly. But then, from behind them came a sudden, sharp sound. A scream. Not of fear, but of recognition. A voice calling her name in shock. Someone who should not have been there. Someone who would change everything. The scream tore through the air so suddenly and so sharply that Sandra felt it vibrate inside her chest. She froze mid-breath, her heart stumbling as she turned toward the sound. Keanu stopped too, his expression shifting from calm seriousness to alert concern. For a moment, everything around them went still again, the showroom, the people, the street, as if the world braced itself for whatever was about to unfold. The voice came again, softer this time but full of disbelief. Sandra Bullock. Sandra blinked, trying to place the origin of the voice. It wasn't a fan's excited call. It was different, full of emotion that felt old, familiar, and distant all at once. When she finally saw who was standing there, her breath caught in her throat. A woman stood at the edge of the sidewalk, holding a purse to her chest, her eyes wide and shimmering with something fragile. She was older than when Sandra last saw her, but the face was unmistakable. "Oh my God," Sandra whispered without meaning to. "Lena." The woman nodded, tears filling her eyes immediately. "I can't believe after all these years." Sandra felt the world tilt for a moment. Lena had once been one of her closest friends, someone she trusted completely, someone she shared laughter, heartbreak, and dreams with. But life had pulled them in different directions, and their friendship had ended not with anger, but with silence, a silence that lasted far too long. Keanu looked between them, sensing the weight of the moment without fully understanding it. Lena stepped closer, her breath shaky. "I wasn't even supposed to be here today," she said softly. I was in the area and saw the crowd. I thought it couldn't be you. But then I saw you helping that boy and I knew." Sandra swallowed hard, memories flooding her mind, quiet nights spent talking about life, long drives with the windows down, Lena crying on her shoulder after a heartbreak, both of them promising to never lose touch. But they had. Life had drifted them apart in ways neither intended. "It's been a long time," Sandra whispered gently. Lena nodded, "Too long." Keanu stayed close, but gave them enough space, sensing this wasn't something he should step into just yet. Sandra took a careful step toward Lena. "Are you okay?" Lena let out a shaky laugh. "I didn't expect to cry in front of you within 10 seconds, but I guess some things never change." Sandra smiled softly, but there was a sadness beneath her smile. "I didn't expect to see you either." Lena looked down for a moment, twisting the strap of her purse nervously. "I heard about everything that happened earlier, the salesman, the accident, you helping the little girl. I watched it all from a distance. I didn't want to interrupt, but when I saw you now, I couldn't hold it in anymore." Sandra felt her heart soften. Lena's voice carried years of unspoken emotions. "Why did we lose touch?" Lena whispered, tears gathering again. "How did we let it happen?" Sandra felt a sting in her chest. "I don't know," she whispered honestly. "Life pulled us apart, and then time passed too quickly." Lena nodded slowly. "I missed you." For a moment, Sandra didn't know what to say. She felt overwhelmed by the day, by the unexpected reunion, by the emotions resurfacing. And Keanu watched her carefully, his eyes softening with understanding. He could sense she needed space but also needed grounding. He gently placed a hand on her back, almost as a silent reassurance that he was there if she needed him. Sandra felt the warmth of his touch, and it steadied her much more than she expected. Lena glanced at Keanu, wiping her tears. "I didn't mean to interrupt something important." Sandra froze for a moment. She realized Lena had walked in right when Keanu was about to tell her something he had been holding for a long time. "No," Sandra said softly, though her voice was thin. "You didn't interrupt anything." Keanu's gentle glance suggested otherwise, but he stayed silent. Lena took a small breath, calming herself. "I'm sorry for showing up like this. When I saw you, I felt like all the years between us fell away." Sandra stepped forward and hugged her. The embrace was long, warm, and full of memories. Lena clung to her tightly, almost as if afraid Sandra might disappear again. When they finally pulled apart, both of them wiped their eyes with quiet smiles. "I'd like to talk later," Lena whispered, "if you want." "I'd like that," Sandra whispered back. Lena nodded, squeezed Sandra's hand once more, then stepped away slowly, giving Sandra a final emotional smile before disappearing into the street crowd. The silence that followed felt heavy. Sandra stood still, breathing deeply, trying to settle the sudden storm of emotions inside her. The reunion had been beautiful but unexpected, overwhelming, confusing. She had already experienced so much that day, and this added a layer she couldn't process all at once. Keanu stepped closer, his voice gentle. "You okay?" She nodded slowly. "That was a lot." "It looked like it," he murmured. She looked at him then, really looked at him, noticing the softness in his eyes, the patience in his expression, the way he always seemed steady even when she was. "Keanu," she whispered, "I'm sorry, you were about to tell me something important." He gave a soft, sad smile. "It's okay, we can talk when you're ready." But Sandra shook her head. "No, you've tried to tell me 3 times, and every time something stops you. Maybe I'm the one who needs to hear it now." Her voice trembled slightly. She wasn't sure if she was ready, but she was sure she didn't want to run from it anymore. Keanu took a slow breath, his eyes darkening with emotion. "Are you sure?" She nodded, yes. He hesitated for a moment before speaking, as if gathering every word carefully. "I brought you here today," he began softly, "because I wanted to remind you of something you always forget, your worth, your strength, your kindness." She blinked, surprised. "Keanu." He continued, "You walk through the world carrying so much on your shoulders, but you never let anyone see when you're hurting. You accept pain quietly. You forgive too easily. You blame yourself for things that were never your fault." Her throat tightened. She wasn't expecting this, not from him, not today. "And today," he said, "when that salesman treated you unfairly, you shrank into yourself. Not because you believed him, but because you're tired. Because you're used to being judged before anyone knows who you really are." She swallowed hard. Her eyes burned, but she fought the tears. Keanu stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Sandra, you deserve better. You deserve respect. You deserve honesty. You deserve people who see you, the real you, not the image, not the assumptions, not the past." Her breath shook. "I brought you here because I wanted to show you something," he said softly. "That you belong in any room you walk into, not because of fame, not because of success, but because of your heart." Her chest tightened painfully. He paused, then added even more softly, "And because I needed to be brave today. I needed to tell you something I've carried for years." Her pulse quickened. "What is it?" Keanu exhaled slowly, his eyes flickering with vulnerability she had never seen from him. "The truth is, I care about you in a way that goes beyond friendship." Her heart stopped. "I have for a long time," he whispered. Sandra couldn't breathe. The world around her blurred, the cars, the street, the people, the cold wind. Everything slipped into silence except for the sound of her heartbeat pounding in her ears. Keanu looked at her with a mix of fear and hope. "I didn't want to burden you with it. I didn't want to hurt anything between us. But today, when I saw you hurt, when I saw how easily someone's words could make you doubt yourself, I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore." Sandra felt a tear slip down her cheek. She didn't wipe it. She couldn't move. "I don't expect anything from you," Keanu said gently. "I don't want to pressure you. I just needed you to know." His voice trembled slightly at the end. Her breath came out shaky, her mind trying to catch up with the confession she had never expected, or maybe one she had always sensed but never dared to face. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She was too overwhelmed, too full, too shocked and fragile all at once. Keanu stepped back a little, giving her space. "You don't have to say anything right now," he murmured. "I understand." But before Sandra could even find her voice, something shifted behind them. A car door slammed. Another voice, low, strained, emotional, broke through the fragile quiet. "So this is where you've been." Sandra turned slowly. Her eyes widened in shock. Her breath stopped. Because standing there, just a few feet away, with a look that held pain, confusion, and something she could not yet name, was a person Sandra never expected to see at that moment. Someone whose presence would complicate everything Keanu had just confessed. When Sandra turned and saw who stood only a few feet away, her breath vanished from her chest as if the wind itself had been pulled out of the world. Her body locked in place, her hands went cold, and her thoughts scattered like loose pages caught in a storm. Keanu stiffened too, not out of fear, but out of understanding, because he recognized the expression on Sandra's face the moment she made eye contact with the unexpected visitor. "Michael," she whispered. The man standing before them was someone she had not spoken to in years. He was not a lover, Not a romantic connection, but someone who once played a deep and painful role in her life, her older stepbrother, estranged for over a decade. He had been out of her life for so long that seeing him now felt impossible, surreal, almost frightening. He looked older, tired, thinner, as if life had dragged him across difficult terrain and left marks on his face that weren't there before. His eyes held a heaviness she had not seen since their last argument many years ago, the argument that ended their communication. Sandra swallowed hard, her voice trembled when she spoke. What are you doing here?" Michael let out a slow breath, his chest rising and falling unevenly. "I could ask you the same thing," he said softly, but there was no anger in his tone, only pain. "I've been trying to find you for weeks." Sandra felt her heart twist. "Why?" Keanu remained beside her, not stepping away, not interfering, but quietly protecting her in a way only he knew how, with steady presence, not with force. He didn't speak unless Sandra needed him, and right now, she needed space to understand what was happening. Michael rubbed the back of his neck, his eyes dropping to the ground. "I didn't want to show up like this," he whispered, "but I didn't know how else to reach you." Sandra felt old memories washing over her, moments of laughter when they were younger, then moments of deep misunderstanding as adults. Their last conversation had ended with both of them hurt, both of them proud, both walking away without turning back. She remembered the ache that followed, the regret she buried, the letters she wrote but never sent. Keanu sensed the emotional storm building inside her. She could feel his eyes on her, soft and supportive, reminding her she wasn't alone. Michael finally looked up again, his eyes glassy with unshed tears. "I didn't know if you'd even want to see me." Sandra took a shaky breath. "You disappeared, Michael. You walked away first." His shoulders dropped. "I know," he whispered, "and I regret it every day." Her chest tightened painfully. Keanu shifted slightly, standing close enough for comfort but far enough for Sandra to handle the conversation herself. He kept his expression soft, even though inside him, a quiet worry grew. He had just confessed something deeply vulnerable moments earlier, and now Sandra's past had returned in a form neither of them expected. Michael continued, "I came because something happened, something serious." Sandra felt a cold wave move over her skin. "What happened?" she asked softly. Michael hesitated, as if searching for courage. "It's about Mom." The ground felt like it shifted beneath her feet. Keanu's eyes widened slightly. He knew how rarely Sandra talked about her stepmother, how complicated that relationship had been, how much unsaid emotion lived in that history. "What about her?" Sandra whispered, her voice cracking. Michael looked down. "She's sick," he said, "really sick." The world blurred around Sandra. She could hear the distant sounds of traffic, wind against glass, faint voices from the showroom, but everything felt distant, muted, unreal. "How sick?" she asked, even though she feared the answer. Michael took a slow, heavy breath. "She doesn't have much time." Sandra felt her throat tighten until she could barely breathe. She stepped back, her hand reaching for something to hold, something to steady her. Keanu stepped forward instinctively, placing a gentle hand on her arm. She didn't pull away. "Why didn't you call me?" she whispered, struggling to keep her voice steady. "I tried," Michael said. "Your old number didn't work. I emailed you twice. I even sent a letter, but I don't know if it reached you." Everything bounced back. Sandra closed her eyes for a moment, trying to fight back the wave of emotion. She was overwhelmed by guilt, by shock, by the sudden confrontation with a past she had pushed away, by the confession Keanu had just made, by the chaotic day filled with accidents, misunderstandings, reunions, and now a painful truth she didn't see coming. "I didn't know," she whispered. Michael stepped forward slightly. "I'm not here to blame you," he said. "I'm here because she wants to see you. She's been asking for you every day." Sandra opened her eyes slowly, and a tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "She wants to apologize," Michael added softly. Sandra's body trembled. Her stepmother had been a complicated presence, sometimes caring, sometimes distant, sometimes strict, sometimes kind. Sandra had carried confusion and resentment silently for years, never fully knowing how to process it. "Is she really?" Sandra couldn't finish the sentence. Michael nodded, "Yes." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, and painful. Sandra felt trapped between the past she had escaped and the future she didn't know how to walk into. She felt guilty for not reaching out, angry for being left in the dark, sad for the years that slipped away, and terrified of facing someone she had unfinished emotions with. Finally, Michael looked at Keanu for the first time. He didn't know what had just happened between them, but he sensed something delicate, something important. "I'm sorry to show up like this," he said quietly, "but I didn't know where else to go." Sandra wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. "Where is she?" she whispered. "Los Angeles," Michael replied. "If you want, I can take you there. She doesn't have much time left." Sandra's heart pounded uncertainly. "I need a moment," she whispered. Michael nodded gently. "I'll wait inside," he said. "Take your time." He stepped away slowly, giving her space but staying close enough to show he wouldn't disappear again. Once he was gone, Sandra let out a long, shaky exhale and pressed her hands against her face. She felt like she was breaking apart in too many directions. Keanu stepped closer, his voice low and warm. "Breathe," he whispered softly. "Just breathe." She lowered her hands, her eyes filled with pain. "Keanu, this is too much," she whispered. "I don't know what to do." He guided her to lean against a nearby wall, not forcefully but with gentle encouragement. "You don't have to decide anything right now," he said softly. Tears slipped from her eyes again. "She wants to see me," Sandra whispered. "After all these years, after everything, she wants to see me now. Why now?" Keanu looked at her carefully. "Because people realize the truth when time becomes short." Sandra sobbed softly. "And what truth is that?" "That love, even complicated love, still matters," he whispered. She wiped her tears, but new ones kept falling. "I don't know if I'm ready," she whispered. "I don't know if I can face her. I don't know what to say." Keanu shook his head gently. "You don't need to know right now. You only need to breathe." She leaned forward suddenly, her forehead resting against his chest. Keanu froze for a second, surprised, then slowly placed his arms around her in a warm, protective embrace. She melted into him, trembling softly, letting herself feel the safety she desperately needed. "Why is everything happening today?" she whispered into his shirt. "Why all at once?" Keanu stroked her back gently. "Maybe because you're stronger than you think," he murmured. "Maybe life waited until you were ready, even if you don't feel ready." She clung to him for another moment, feeling the steady rhythm of his heart guiding her breath back into place. Eventually, she pulled back slightly, wiping her cheeks. "I heard what you said earlier," she whispered, her voice fragile but honest. "I heard your confession." Keanu held her gaze gently but didn't push. "You don't need to answer me now." "I know," she whispered, "but I want to say your words meant more than you know." The softness in his eyes deepened. "Keanu," she whispered again, her voice shaky, "I don't know what today means for us, for my past, for everything. But I want you to know your presence today kept me from falling apart." He nodded slowly, emotion flickering behind his calm expression. "I'm here," he said softly. "I'm not going anywhere." She looked down, touched in a way she didn't know how to express. "I just need time," she whispered. "I know," he replied gently. She took another long breath and looked toward the showroom entrance where Michael had gone inside to wait. She knew she would have to face him soon and then face her stepmother. She wasn't ready, but she felt Keanu's presence beside her like a quiet strength she could lean on. "I think I need to go see her," Sandra whispered. Keanu nodded. "Then I'll go with you." She looked at him sharply. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said simply. Her eyes softened. "Thank you." But before she could take another breath, before she could gather the courage to step toward the entrance, before she could process the storm inside her, Michael suddenly rushed back out of the showroom with panic in his eyes. "Sandra," he gasped, "something happened inside. You need to come now." Her heart dropped. Keanu tensed. Sandra froze. Michael pointed toward the showroom with trembling hands. "It's the man who insulted you earlier," he whispered urgently. "He just collapsed and he asked for you." The moment Michael said the salesman had collapsed and was asking for her, Sandra felt a strange rush of cold sweep through her body. It wasn't fear for herself. It wasn't anger or resentment. It was something deeper, something confusing, concern for someone who had treated her unkindly only hours earlier. Keanu saw the shock on her face and placed a steady hand on her arm, grounding her again with that quiet strength he carried so naturally. "Let's go," he said gently. Sandra nodded, even though her stomach tightened with uncertainty. She followed Michael toward the entrance, moving quickly but with a heavy heart. The world around her blurred as she walked, the sparkling lights of the showroom, the glossy cars, the customers who had witnessed everything earlier. She could feel their eyes shift toward her, not with judgment now, but with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Inside, the salesman lay on the floor near the counter, surrounded by two employees and a stunned manager. His face was pale, his breathing heavy, and his hands trembled slightly. Sandra recognized the look immediately, not of physical pain, but of emotional collapse. When he saw her, his eyes widened, and something inside him cracked visibly. Miss Sandra," he whispered, voice shaking. She knelt beside him carefully, her voice gentle despite everything that had happened. "I'm here," she said softly. "What happened?" The salesman swallowed hard, tears forming in the corners of his eyes. I wasn't trying to be cruel," he whispered. "I've been stressed, the job, the pressure, I made a mistake. I judged you without knowing anything." Sandra blinked. She hadn't expected this, not from him, not today. The manager stepped forward, whispering urgently. "He's been upset ever since the incident earlier. He said he felt ashamed after hearing what you did for that boy outside, and then he fainted." The salesman grabbed her sleeve weakly. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I shouldn't have spoken to you that way. I shouldn't speak to anyone that way. I treated you like someone who didn't belong here, but you showed kindness today that I couldn't even show in the simplest moment." Sandra's heart softened in a way she couldn't explain. She saw not the man who embarrassed her, but a human being drowning under his own mistakes, guilt, and exhaustion. She knew that feeling. She had lived with her own regrets for years. She gently placed her hand on his. "We all make mistakes," she whispered. "What matters is that you see it now." A tear slipped down his cheek. "You didn't deserve that, and the fact that you're kneeling here, helping me after how I treated you, that means more than I can say." Keanu stepped closer, his presence warm and protective, but he did not interfere. He let Sandra hold this moment because he saw how deeply it mattered, not just for the salesman, but for her. Paramedics arrived moments later and took over, checking the man's vitals, lifting him gently onto a stretcher. Before they carried him out, he reached for Sandra again. "Thank you," he whispered, "for seeing me as a person even when I didn't do the same for you." Sandra nodded softly. "Take care of yourself." As he was taken away, the showroom employees stood silently, absorbing the unexpected tenderness they had just witnessed. The manager bowed slightly to Sandra, humbled by everything. Sandra stepped back, overwhelmed but steady. Keanu touched her elbow softly. "You handled that with so much grace," he murmured. But Sandra shook her head. I didn't want him to feel alone," she said. "I know what it's like to carry regret." Keanu looked at her with a quiet admiration that made her chest warm. "That's exactly why I care about you," he whispered. She looked down, breath trembling, unsure how to respond to such honest emotion. Michael stepped forward then, nervous, uncertain if he was interrupting something again. "Sandra, we still need to go, if you're ready." Sandra turned, the decision weighing heavily on her. Her stepmother, the woman who raised her in fragments, sometimes lovingly, sometimes strictly, sometimes confusingly. Feelings she never fully sorted lived inside her, and now she had to face them all at once. "I'm ready," she whispered, though fear tugged gently at her heart. Keanu stepped up beside her immediately. "I'm coming with you," he said softly. Michael nodded, accepting it without question. The drive to Los Angeles was long and quiet at first. Sandra stared out the window, watching the shifting scenery blur past her, her thoughts tangled in 1,000 threads. The boy, the girl, the mother and child, the salesman, Lena, Michael, and finally, Keanu's confession. Every moment from that day felt surreal, heavy with meaning she still couldn't untangle. Keanu sat beside her in the back seat, giving her space, but also silently offering comfort whenever she needed it. Halfway through the drive, Sandra finally spoke. "Do you think it's too late?" she whispered. Keanu turned to her gently. "For what?" "For forgiveness," she said softly. "For understanding, for healing." Keanu shook his head. "It's never too late for any of those," he whispered. "Not if both hearts are open." She swallowed, emotion rising again. "I'm scared." "It's okay to be scared," he said. "Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's walking through it anyway." She breathed deeply, letting his words settle into her like warm light. When they reached the small house where Michael and their stepmother lived, Sandra felt her chest squeeze painfully. The house was quiet, the yard empty, the air heavy with stillness. Michael led them inside, down a hallway filled with old pictures of family moments that felt like someone else's life now. Her stepmother lay on a bed in a softly lit room, her face pale but peaceful. Her eyes opened as they entered, and when she saw Sandra, tears filled her eyes instantly. "Sandra," she whispered, voice thin. Sandra stepped forward slowly, her heart trembling. "Hi," she whispered. Her stepmother reached out a weak hand. Sandra took it gently, feeling how fragile the woman had become. "I'm sorry," her stepmother whispered. "For everything, for the moments I failed you, for the moments I didn't show you the love you needed. I thought I was protecting you, but I see now I hurt you." Sandra felt her throat break open. "I made mistakes too," she whispered through tears. "I should have tried harder to understand you. I should have talked to you instead of holding everything in." Her stepmother shook her head weakly. "You were the child, I was the adult. It was my job to understand. I didn't always do that." The room grew softer, warmer, filled with something fragile and beautiful, forgiveness. They talked gently for a while, sharing apologies that had lived in the shadows for years. Tears flowed quietly, not from pain but from release. Each word lifted heavy stones from their hearts. Finally, her stepmother squeezed her hand. "You grew into such a kind woman," she whispered. "I see it now. I saw the news, what you did today. The world may see you as a star, but I see you as someone who still chooses kindness even when she is hurting." Sandra cried softly. "I learned that from you," she whispered. Her stepmother smiled faintly, closed her eyes, and rested peacefully. Sandra held her hand long after she fell asleep, feeling the quiet healing of a wound she never thought could close. When Sandra finally stepped out into the hallway, Keanu was waiting for her. He stood with his back against the wall, hands in his pockets, eyes soft and warm. When he saw her, he straightened, concern flickering across his face. "How did it go?" he whispered. Sandra wiped a tear with a shaky smile. "Better than I expected," she said. "We said everything we needed to say." Keanu nodded gently. "I'm glad." She stepped closer, her voice fragile but honest. "Thank you for being here. I don't think I could have done this alone." Keanu shook his head softly. "You were never alone," he whispered. She took a slow breath, emotions swelling again, but this time they were warm, not heavy. She looked at him, truly looked at him, seeing not just the man who stood beside her today, but the man who had stood beside her in quiet ways for years. "Keanu," she whispered, her heart trembling. "About what you said earlier, I think I needed today to understand something." He held her gaze gently, waiting without pushing. "I'm not ready for a big answer," she said softly, "but I'm ready for something else." His eyes softened. "What's that?" She stepped closer, her voice just above a whisper. "I'm ready to stop running from the people who care about me." Keanu's breath caught almost invisible, but she saw it. A soft smile touched his lips, full of hope, respect, and something beautifully patient. "I can live with that," he murmured. Sandra smiled through her tears and leaned into his arms, letting herself rest in the warmth she had been afraid to feel for too long. It wasn't a promise of a future, not yet. But it was a beginning, gentle, real, and deeply human. As she held him, the chaos of the day melted into a quiet truth. She had forgiven others, forgiven herself, found new strength, and finally allowed her heart to breathe again. Outside, the night settled softly around the house, carrying the weight of a day filled with pain, kindness, truth, and healing. A day that changed everything. And for the first time in a very long time, Sandra felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope,